Allah, umtali wetu Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Again, you are sitting in conversation with Soweto Muslim Association. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, we are forever grateful and we are forever extending our gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the maker, the creator, the originator, who has made it possible for us again to be in this segment. We are again continuing as Soweto Muslim Association in conversation with different communities that are there, understanding that we are very dynamic now, understanding that we have expanded our understanding of Islam as well as understanding of the South African context of Islam. We have been speaking a lot about the indigenous Muslims of South Africa, and this is not just our aim and objective, but just to highlight some of the most important things within this land of South Africa, Emhlabeni wakithi, South Africa. And we want all of the other nations within this beautiful universe to understand the beauty of Islam, not only through a certain nationality, through a certain context, or through a certain ideology that is pushed by a certain narrative that seems to marginalize certain people, and others are left just wanting and finding. We are happy that we have expanded ourselves as the Soweto Muslim Association to recognize personalities, to recognize people that are playing the most important role, the most significant role in various communities. Today I am sitting again with a very profound person, a person that is playing an immense and important role in the society of South Africa within, of course, the household of Islam. I am sitting today with a person that is a leader. As we refer to leaders in Islam, we refer to them as Amirs. I'm sitting with an Ameer, a leader of a community, a Muslim community in Klipspruit West, and this forms part of Soweto. And this community is predominantly a colored community, which somehow this name of colored has been contested and saying people it should be changed because this was somehow the labeling from our historical apartheid background. He's also involved in politics, this particular individual. He stood as an independent candidate as well into the local elections. And also is an organizing member. He was an organizing member of the aid that was channeled towards Gaza, which was called the 1-8 convoy, the Africa 1-8 convoy from Cape to Gaza. He's also a very person that is very active in the issues of education. He has been a very good, well-standing personality in terms of the SGB, the school governing body, and he has played a major role in his community in doing so. I am sitting here with our honorable guest by the name of Sheikh Shakir Baker. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Mu'ana Dawood, and to the viewers of this channel this afternoon.
I must say up front that we are very happy to have you today. It was not easy to find you since you are a person that gets to be busy now and then, and particularly that you are an active member of your community and you have extended yourself in many other communities that are there. But I must say, just maybe to put it on record, you might be the first one that is coming from the colored community as a leader that has honored us with this invitation to be with us here in Soweto Muslim Association. We thought we can never be marginalized and marginalized others as well. But we understand that you are part of a greater community that plays a role in Soweto. Klipspruit West is part of Soweto, whether we like it or not. And we are not here as sympathizers, but we are here to recognize your leadership. We are here to recognize your availability. We are here to recognize your being there as a very important part of our community that is thriving and working very hard in making sure that we develop. Maybe our traditional question, as we ask as SMA, who is Shakir Baker or Muhtaram, or should we call you Mufti, should we call you Maulana? Who is Shakir Baker, the leader of the Muslim communities within Soweto?
Alhamdulillah, firstly, born and bred in Soweto, in Klipspruit. I thank Allah for that. Allah Ta'ala afforded me the opportunity to grow up within the community. And I'm a community activist. I've been in the service of community since 1999, Moana. And Alhamdulillah, over the years, I think I can only praise Allah for allowing me. But the most significant thing is, with all the titles, I think there's only one title that I believe that I honestly have earned is the title Father. All the other titles are given just by the way. So we serve our community and we ask Allah to keep us humble in service to our community.
You grew up in Klipspruit West. Your growth, maybe your very humble beginnings. Were you from the predominantly Muslim family? Were you also from that community where you were surrounded by Muslims, or it was something that was just a rare to find?
Alhamdulillah, Maana, maybe to say, in the community of Klipspruit West, where I am from, the first madrasa in the community was board in the home of my late foster mother's house, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, under the great leadership of then leader of the Malay communities in Johannesburg, who was known as Ajulutfit, and Imam Khafiling, the likes of Imam Khafiling, Imam Pisanki. And these were the people that then saw that the Malay communities or the colored communities would then establish. There was no masjid at the time, but predominantly by the grace of Allah, we grew up in an environment. Once there was a masjid in 1994, completed in 1996, we grew up in the comfort of the masjid by the grace of Allah, under the guidance of our elders.
There's many people that might have played a very important role in your community, like we reflect with so many of them that have played a very important role in our lives. In particular, you have mentioned some of the sheikhs that were there, and they played an important role in making sure that Islam is recognized and there is a practice of Islam by means of bringing about elementary studies in terms of madrasa. Do you have some that maybe you could remember that played a very important role in shaping you as a young boy emerging in the community?
By the grace of Allah, there are many that played a critical role in my life, and I cannot forget. I always say my late mother, foster mother, who nurtured me within Islamic environment and ensured that I went to go study then. But I want to reflect for the community of Klipspruit West to understand. There's a family known as the Albertine family in Klipspruit West, and the family historically played a critical role, whether the evidence is given or not, but there's claims to say that the masjid where it is built today was the property of the Albertine family, and ultimately Allah Ta'ala selected that piece of property to where the masjid is. But the family played a critical role in establishing the Klipspruit West Muslim Council, who today I am the leader of. And when I started teaching in the madrasa in Klipspruit West, the late Uncle Farid Albertine took me under his wing, and he nurtured me with the assistance of the then Imam Satruddin Watleka, and molded me into where I was. And then you had the Kara family that was in Klipspruit West, the Jones family that played a critical role. But for us, the Albertine family, they steered the Islamic identity. Is not so long ago, I spoke to one of the sons of the late Uncle Farid Albertine, and he says his father's fight was never to fill the masjids. His father's fight was, or his father's understanding was, how to educate in the establishment of the madrasa, to educate Muslims about Islam, so that Islam one day could grow. And when we look at Klipspruit, when we were growing up, we were speaking about that time, I think 60, 70 Muslim families. Today, we have almost doubled in the number to almost 200 Muslim families, and that excludes the migrant Muslim communities that we also come into our communities.
Every community in South Africa is very unique. Every community in South Africa has its specialities. Here we've been speaking about, in Soweto particularly, with more than, this is what we have all of the time have actually cited, that if you look at Soweto itself, with a population of not less than 6 million people that are there, and just a stone throw away from Soweto, you've got Lanesia, which is referred to as Lens. And this is what I'd actually shared in many platforms that were there. And in Soweto itself, with about 6 million people, in the past 30 years of democracy, if maybe we refer back to 30 years, there has not been any kind of a stride in terms of significant growth in terms of Islam. And Soweto, if we are to count official places of worship, mosque or masjid as we refer to them, there would be about 2, although we have about 4 or 5, but very important ones that we refer to would be about 2 of them. And now you're looking at Klipspruit West, a predominantly colored community that relates very well with us. As later on we would discuss very important question to say, we as indigenous, we are not as indigenous that is peculiar to the colored community, which is also indigenous communities. I think this is what makes it very beautiful that is there. Many of the masajid that we find in the township are the masajid that you would find there was a role in where the Indian Muslim community might have played to say, let's build a mosque for them. Do we have this kind of a situation within the community of colored, or as you would refer to them as Malay, that the Indian community have played a role in controlling their trustees, controlling their buildings, controlling the structures of Islam within the community?
Moana, I think you're 100% correct in your understanding. The colored communities predominantly at that particular stage, when Muslim communities was established, you will find that there were prominent Indian families like the Budanias, the Jadas, the Siddats. These were families that predominantly played a critical role in the establishment of many of these masjids. We make dua that Allah Ta'ala reward them for the efforts that they have made. But the one of the biggest challenges I think that we found was that in establishing these institutions, these masjids in the Malay community, and Klipspruit is not exemplified from that particular notion, that the masjid and the key role players was, in the incident of Klipspruit, was the Budania family from Rhodoport. And to the extent that they had held for a very long time the title deeds of the masjids, and people assumed that was then the masjids that belonged to that particular family. But the context where we are today as a colored or Malay community is because of those historical passes of our past, where our people felt gullible to the injustices that a masjid that is built by, per se, the Baker family or the Nglovo family belongs to the Nglovo family or the Baker family, rather than it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is the public entity and not a personal or family entity. And that has been the challenge. So till today, there are many masjids in many colored areas. Till this day, Allah be my witness to that the title deeds are being held by Indian communities or Indian families, because it is it keeps to some form of control. In Klipspruit, alhamdulillah, like I say, with the assistance, with the leadership of people like Uncle Farid Al-Batain and them, that foresaw these things not happening, and these things were prevented from happening. In Klipspruit, we are independent, but ultimately, we require the assistance of the Indian community where we are today to continue, because we are a community of Muslims where 80% of the Muslims in our community are unemployed and dependent zakat.
Somehow we want to move away from asking from other communities to start becoming of assistance to us, but with an understanding that is so beautiful in Islam. As Muslims, we also reiterate again, as Muslims, we are an ummah. We are one ummah. We are one ummah to an extent that if one part of the ummah is suffering, the whole ummah then suffers, meaning we are one nation, we are like one body. We would like at some point to become independent as communities, that we take care of our own affairs. No, when we say this, it does not mean that we want to sideline, we want to marginalize, and we want not to recognize people that are playing a very important role in terms of development of Islam. Is the colored community, I'm using this word colored for the sake of conversation and not for any, not using it as a derogatory term, Because sometimes when the people joke, they say that when you are a Malay, you are a Muslim. If you are referred to as a colored, it means you are non-Muslim. So these are just terms that are used, and we are familiar with them in South Africa. Is the colored Muslim community in South Africa independent?
Moana, that's a very, very heavy question you're asking there. And allow me to say to you, I think our desire is the same desire as we see in our black brothers' desire for us to be able to can look after ourselves. Before the advent of Islam, our families and our communities built churches out of the pennies that they used to earn. Today, out of the thousands we earn, we're unable to sustain masjids and madrasas. And that is where our challenge is. Many people think Islam is based on receiving only of charity, but our responsibility to look after that which is today one of the biggest challenges we face. Islam has grown to such a large proportion that even those who used to give it too little, the time has come that we must look after our own and become independent. We're not saying, with the exception of a few, there are Muslims in the colored communities or the Cape Malay communities that support their communities, alhamdulillah, and we ask Allah Ta'ala to increase them. Similarly, we would believe in the African communities, there are those business people who gives in the community. We are saying that a time must come that we look after our own people and we are not being looked after by others.
There are very important key role players. If you talk about the Cape Malay communities, well, alhamdulillah, we have the likes of organizations like the MJC, the Muslim Judicial Council. We have had many of those that served as the presidents of MJC. One of the character or important leader that was once the president of MJC was Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, who served very well. But in my conversation with him, in one of our interactions that I had with him, when I said to him, look, you have got a Malay community that somehow has become interdependent or independent, especially in propagating and developing and promoting Islam. But why is it that you find about 68% of the Malay Muslims in Cape Town that you would still find are voting for the DA? It was really mind-boggling to say, how is it that these people are Muslims and they're about 68% Muslims, or whether they are Muslims by inheritance or Muslims by choice, but they are Muslims, but they would still vote the DA in the Good Cape, And he said to me, look, you cannot, somehow there are certain dynamics in where you cannot just see it that way to say, because they are Muslims, it means they are practicing Muslims. He says you find a number of them, a big number of them, that would steal from Fajr time until Isha. They are wearing gowns and they are wearing pajamas. So you need people that are actually active on the ground. We are seeing that independence, be it as it may, there is those who have played a very, very important role. Now, maybe since you are also a political head, meaning that you've stood as a candidate once, independent candidate in local elections. We are seeing now the local elections are coming by next year. And now we are in the local elections fever, There is Adams that is there. There's a fellow calls himself Adams. I forgot his full name, but he's there to say Fadil. Fadil, he says he stands for the colored people, for the Malay people who are marginalized, by the DA and all of that. He's very vocal and he's also a member of parliament. And we have also Gayton Mackenzie, who played a very, very divisive role in dividing the communities of South Africa, particularly by playing the colored card, in saying that the coloreds are being marginalized, as much as we understand that. But you can never take us back to the apartheid, which was very, very raw, very bad. It was a very bad system. Now, you have got the colored Muslims in South Africa that are there. What is the role, what is the stance of the colored Muslims in South Africa towards the PA over the position of Palestinian support?
Mana, allow me to first to make a disclaimer because we're living in a social media phenomenal, and somehow people would pick it up on social media that at one stage I congratulated the now Minister of Sports and Recreation, Minister Gayton McKenzie, for his visionary he had for the colored communities, and we saw him or believed of him to become, we can say, the hope for the colored community. But the position that the Patriotic Alliance took around Palestine, in particular Gaza, has seen the likes of myself and the likes of many others distancing itself from the Patriotic Alliance. For the Patriotic Alliance has Muslim support, and we can never shy away from the fact, and they will tell it to our faces that they have Muslim support. Whether the question is whether the aqaid of those Muslims are correct or not correct is debatable. But is it important to have Muslims in the Patriotic Alliance? Yes, I believe it is important, but I believe that the Muslims must become vocal and outspoken on the position of the Palestinian people, because the colored communities, the PA, particularly in El Rado Park, has seen a great support from the Muslim community, particularly towards its councillor in the area, who is a Muslim at the moment, Juwairia Kaldin. And she, to a large extent, she's doing some good work. We may not agree to everything that the PA, and I always say, I differ my stance is I don't support the Patriotic Alliance. I have never supported them. I have given a notion to Gayton McKenzie. Now I am, of the last local elections, the last national elections, general elections, and by the grace and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will be campaigning against the Patriotic Alliance. Not only the Patriotic Alliance, any party for that matter that supports genocide. And that we must be clear. In South Africa, how can a South African, and particularly, I always say, colored people, if they understand the term colored, what it means, that was given to us. You would not be proud to use the term, but because we are aligning to a cultural identity of a colored identity and not a terminology of colored, we therefore go with the term. I would rather be called a Busman or a Khoi or Hottentot, which then speaks to where I come from. But the term colored was given to us, and now we politicizing on the term colored. Because it was given to us by an apartheid government, like Bantu, etc., was given to our brothers from other races, because that is how we were classified. So the Muslims' position, unfortunately, we are seeing the Muslim support in South Africa from the coloreds. The question you rose about the DA, it's the same analogy can be made about the PA, that Muslims ultimately, I don't know, is there a race identification within some of the Muslim communities or something, but Muslims would rather support a racial group like whites or colored political aligned, rather than those of us who subscribe to non-racialism and non-sexism.
While we are living in the social media space, one can never be oblivious of the fact that there's so many things that we see there and sometimes resonate with some of the ideas that we try to share with the greater community that is there. There is a clip of Malema where he speaks about, Julius Malema, where he speaks about it. I think he was addressing the people in Lens in the meeting. And he was saying very strongly to say he can never, ever take serious something to this effect, that a Muslim, a sincere Muslim, who would go on and vote for the DA or vote for any other political party like the PA or maybe ACDP, those that have made it very clear that they stand with Israel. And they not just stand with Israel, you'd hear some of these things to say, is it because maybe their sponsorship comes from Israel, or it comes from those people, they are the sympathizers of Israel and other things that are there. Of the latest now, we had seen the clip of Helen Zeller, where she speaks about genocide, and she escapes so beautifully that question when they ask, is there genocide? Is there genocide in Palestine? And it's so sad that she could actually move away in trying to answer a very simple question like that she says that in the DA we do not discuss about that. We have never discussed that issue. But really, in Rwanda, we know that between the Hutus and the Tutsis, there was genocide, where she says that I've never been to Gaza for me to see if there is genocide. But nobody has been, many of us have never been to Rwanda to experience genocide. It's not for us to travel to Rwanda to experience the genocide. But you are seeing so many Muslims that are there, in political parties like the DA, the PA, ACDP, that they are very clear, even the IFP itself, they're very clear that they stand with Israel. Now, what is the role that a Muslim would play in such a political party in where the issue of Gaza and the issue of Palestine is clearly a genocide that is happening against people who cannot defend themselves?
Mana, I think it is clear that people must understand that political parties will speak to two mandates in South Africa. They speak to an international mandate. In terms of the international mandate, there are South African political parties, even in the black conscious parties, what we would call the black conscious organizations, that the IFP, for example, COPE, for example, that is direct supporters of Israel. And we articulated profoundly that these organizations undoubtedly are receiving their funds from the rogue state of Israel, whether directly or indirectly, whether sourced through local funders or sources, but they are there, and we should not exclude funding from organizations like Germany, Britain. The role of Muslims currently is of one or two folds. The first is that Muslims, it is critical, unfortunately, whether I personally support an organization that supports the rogue state of Israel, like the Patriotic Alliance, the DP, or the DA, or the IDPC, or any party for that matter. To have Muslims in those parties are important to maintain the South African and local issues of Muslims must be maintained. So when we look at politics, we look at two aspects. What is our South African position? In a South African position, I must be able to say that our masjids must never be able to be destroyed. One. Number two is our Islamic identity and respect for our religion, tolerance going to be maintained? There's lots of speaks taking place of an increase of a Jewish or a Zionist groupings taking home in the Western Cape. We are asking the question, where to is that going to go? So that is in discussions of our local. How do we preserve our Islamic identity within South Africa? Number two is, what is the aspect now leading with our opposition to our Aqaid? And our Aqaid is very important, sorry. Our Aqaid in this aspect must be reflected to how do we see as a Muslim, can I support a party that support the rogue state of that support the genocide of Muslims around the world? We saw when, for example, political parties supported Russia. The Democratic Alliance was the first to criticize those parties in its support for Ukraine. When the call was made for South Africa to support the Palestinian cause, and we must speak to our historical context between the PA, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, and the South African resistance movement. In the South African resistance against apartheid was spearheaded and supported by leaders like Yasser Arafat. Like what we see today, sorry, people will say Yasser Arafat was this, he was that. But South Africa, we have close political ties with him. Algeria, Northern Africa, Western Africa, and these relationships, as Nelson Mandela in the UK was asked the question around the issue of Palestine, how is it that you as South Africa can enjoy relationship with dictators of this nature, as they would term them? And then Nelson Mandela said, your friends cannot necessarily be our friends, and your enemies don't need to be our enemies. And in the same breath, I would want to say that it would be different if one institution would accuse the rogue state of Israel and say there's a genocide or famine happening in the Gaza over me being a Muslim saying it. The call has been made by international institutions, except that South Africa took Israel to the Justice Court. We are seeing that there is one objective, and the objective is clear. As the objective was clear in apartheid, it was how do we get rid of a community and take a land of a people without the permission of the owners of the land.
Maybe this is a very important discussion, because it leads us to now an international topic that everyone is talking about: what is happening in Palestine, the genocide that is there, the atrocities that are there. Soweto has played a role a few months back, where we hosted many of maybe two journalists that were coming from Palestine, that were humanitarian journalists, showed us how bad it is, and took us through their experience of journalism, and the killings and the atrocities, the bombs, the situation that is there. But Soweto, for the first time, it has hosted a walk from the historical Regina Mount to the historical mosque in Dlamini, which this mosque in Soweto, which was opened in 1985, opened by Her Majesty the Winnie Mandela, and she's the one that opened the mosque. But also you played a role in the aid of Gaza, which it was referred to as 1-8 convoy from Cape to Gaza. While we are at it, maybe what was your position on this whole journey that took place?
Alhamdulillah, my role was that of the national coordinator for the Africa 1-8 convoy in the SADC region, that allowed me to travel throughout SADC, Southern African countries, to promote and speak in gaining support for the people of the Gaza and taking aid to the people of the Gaza. But man, I think interestingly enough, you led the first in terms of, I would say, terminology of current position. But in 2008, we just need to reflect, there was a march in Soweto for Palestine.
Yes.
And I was part of that particular march. So we must reflect. We would say this was the first great march that took place in Soweto a few months ago. The previous one was very small, and it was organized outside of Soweto for the people of Soweto. This march that took place here in Mubarak, to yourself and your team, it was a march by the people of Soweto, through the hands of the people of Soweto, and we saw Sowetans coming out and supporting it in its numbers. So for that is historically important, not for anything else, but for the relationship that Soweto played in breaking the siege of apartheid in this country, and where we are today, and what message it is to send to the world, that it is no longer limited to the fragments of an Indian community or a Malay community or a community of affluency, but it goes beyond the race. It goes beyond border. I recently received or read an interesting article that came out of the Gaza, and one of the mashayikh, he writes out and he says that we do not write to you because we have the time to write to you. We do not cry because we love the sound of our noise, of our hailing when we're crying. We're not asking out of to you because we want to ask from you. He says so profoundly, he says, we come to you to remind you that we are helping you as an ummah in protecting the land that belongs to all of us.
So beautiful. It is so beautiful. Now, we are seeing, we would love as the Muslim Ummah, as much as we can, to play a very significant and maybe important role in making sure that there is aid towards Gaza. And many of those, myself and yourself, we had many privileges of sitting with some of these guys, since also you were part of the Al-Quds Foundation. In this Al-Quds Foundation, which was led by Maulana Ihsan, the late Maulana Ihsan Hendricks, rahimahullah, and now it is led by Sheikh Gabriel's, I think, Al-Quds Foundation. Now, we are seeing a lot of overseas guests, particularly the ulama, some of the ulama that we see on our social media spaces. And many of them, they're coming to South Africa, and they are saying that we are here to collect on behalf of Gaza. Some of them, they're saying, look, we've got such programs in where we're collecting for Gaza. And we are seeing some of them, some with proof, some without proof, of course, that they are leaving South Africa with a lot and lots of monies. There's a lot of monies that they're actually collecting from South Africa. Some even we hear they live with millions of rands, in somehow promoting their programs of Gaza. While we understand in South Africa that we are a giving community, we are a community that gives a lot. But many of those that we have met from Palestine, whether it be the Minister of Health from Palestine who has visited us, whether it be the Sheikh Raid Salah that we have met, Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qardawi who came, and when we asked the question, what role can we play? Many of them have told us, your dua is enough for us. And we had Hamza Sha'lan, who's a journalist as well, that when we asked him, what humanitarian aid is there that you are receiving from South Africa? He said, I would not like to somehow cite politics that I mean, but I can tell you that the organization that we had seen on the ground is gift of the givers, but we have so many organizations that are actually collecting on behalf of Palestine. What role can we play really as the Muslim community of South Africa from these communities, from the township communities, not the affluent communities that we had seen that they are collecting on behalf of Gaza?
Mana, okay, firstly, I just want to reflect that the giving to the people of Gaza is important. And while we know it's a very challenging time, our brothers in Egypt is failing us in the blockade at the borders of the Gaza. We are seeing the flotillas that is heading towards the Gaza. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soften the hearts of the intelligence and the mukhabarat of Egypt and allowing to assist them to go in there, because they say, my brother will say one thing with the tongue and do something else with the hand, and this is what we see amongst our Arabs happening. But I think what we need to do now as an indigenous community, we may not have the financial ability to send aid to the Gaza or be able to support the people of the Gaza. I think we are now at a stage where we need to at least once a day reflect on the Gaza, and as the spirit we have as South Africans, is we have had during the World Cup seasons, we'll have a Friday that we would wear the T-shirt of our sports fielders to say that we are supporting the Bafana, so we're supporting the Springbokke or the cricket Proteas. We are simply now saying is, why then not can we promote the plight of the Palestinian people by making actually physically available on our bodies, by wearing a T-shirt on a particular day once a week, just to say that today is a Friday and I'm committing this day as a day for Palestine.
Oh, maybe also it's so beautiful what you're saying, but maybe you're also escaping from my direct question. Let me ask it in a different way. It's not the first time that we are seeing a genocide, and we can never trivialize the plight of the people of Palestine. We have got many genocides that have taken place, and whenever we stand on Friday and we make dua on that pulpit, on that mimbar, we also recognize others that are going through the same difficulties in Africa. We have got a lot of fights, a fight that has been going on for long in Congo. We have got people of South Sudan. South Sudan has just it's the last country in the world to receive independence in 2012, and they have been separated from the north of Sudan. And you should see the poverty that is there. And more than millions of people were actually killed, in Sudan, and the poverty is perpetuated. The poverty is continuing. You can see the remnants of all the atrocity that has actually happened. Why are we specifying? Many people do ask, why are we specifying Gaza as if there is nothing that is happening in Africa?
Mana, I think maybe to answer your question is that we are not escaping the challenges that is faced in Africa. Africa needs our assistance as much as the people in the Gaza. But in the profound words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, he says that the greatest catastrophe of our time, and he says in his address to the United Nations, he says, if the greatest catastrophe that I have witnessed over my time serving as SG of the United Nations is what is happening in the Gaza. In 2017, we spoke to what was happening in Syria and what unfolded in Syria. In 2019, we reflected what happened in Rohingya. In 2019, we looked at what happened in Ka, the Central African Republic. We, not so long ago, we reflected on the great hardships and difficulty reflected by our brothers here in Malawi. We saw what happened in Zimbabwe. In all these countries, when we look at our international position, we can reflect to each and everything. But today, we are saying, we are not seeing the people in Ka being chased out of their country, although many come and they seek refuge in other countries. We're seeing in Malawi, when you and I would visit Malawi, we'd see Malawi is a very beautiful country, but yet Malawians come and they seek refugees in our country. When we visit Zimbabwe, the rich tobacco fields that is there, we're going to come back and we're going to find comfort here. When you visit the Gaza and you look at the current conditions of the Gaza has been 70% flattened. So to rebuild the Gaza alone, in 2013, the rebuild project of the Gaza just finished after the 2017 war on the Gaza. That 2007 war on the Gaza, that cost them just close to $2 billion to rebuild the Gaza. Today we are speaking of $2 trillion that is required just to bring some form of existence to the Gaza. So we can undoubtedly say it is the worst catastrophe that has hit our common worlds in current times. And therefore we are calling for the Gaza to be prioritized.
Have we not played an important role that surpasses many countries in the world? That when you hear the cries from Gaza, you hear people saying, where are the Arabs? Where are the Arabs? Where are the Arabs? Which some they differ to say, why are you crying Arabs? Because we are in Ummah. You cannot just somehow choose the Arabs to be the ones that comes through. Is it an Arab war? Is it an Islamic war? Is it a religious war? Is it a political war that is happening there? As South Africa, we have played an important role. As we understand the likes of the leaders like Yasser Arafat, that played an important role towards us gaining this democracy. And we are the country that has taken Israel to ICJ. As South Africans, many people understand, until today they say, South Africa, you have surpassed many. South Africa, thank you so much for such an important role that you continue to play. But we know locally that the issue of Gaza with political parties, it is a political expedience. Many of them are using it as a political expedience. While we understand as well that South Africa continues to trade with Israel, while on the other side, we are actually sending Israel to ICJ. Yes, we are playing a very important role, but we are saying that what more can we do? Because if you look at many political parties, they are saying, look, there's also many issues that we need to be faced with here in South Africa. Look at General Mkhwanazi. General Mkhwanazi is going through this commission in where he is revealing all the rot that is happening in South Africa. Unfortunately, I was saying the other time that it's very much unfortunate that General Mkhwanazi is alone, but this has been going on for so many years, and it is happening under our nose. As South Africans, maybe we need to be more patriotic in understanding some of these issues. So now this saying that, look, South Africa has its own problems that are there, but be it as it may, we still play a very important role in making sure that we sympathize, we empathize with the people of Gaza, with the people of Palestine. Is it not a turn in where also we focus our resources to the people that are also poor within the country of South Africa, given the role that we have played that is important for Gaza?
Mana, and to the listeners and viewers out there, I think it's important to note that South Africa has a very critical role to play, particularly in untangling our current political dynamics, economical challenges we face, in poverty, inherent, and I always use the term inherited poverty situations, because of the perpetuation of a culture of corruption. We are limited to those who we believe, or to be empowering others, but empowering themselves. And that is our challenge in South Africa. Our challenge in South Africa, and maybe this glazing away from the Palestinian issue into the South African context. While South Africa is doing its part, and we must remain committed and support our government in the ICJ case. And we need to continue, but yes, we need to reflect in what we are doing locally and what is important to our people locally, and how do we address our challenges that we face locally. Currently in South Africa, we have poverty and unemployment, while others will say, no, this can be done, that can be done. We must reflect when we were at a trajectory of moving our economy up, after the likes of corruption, the hands of corruption between 1999 to almost 2017 under the leadership of the administration of our country. We saw a swift of the leadership standing up and rising up and say, let us fight corruption. Let us oppose corruption. And this I would want to be quoted for. Our problem is not that the fight of corruption, or we don't have the energy to fight corruption. The issue that we have, the culture of corruption, has manifested itself in various forms. We want to go out there as citizens, and we want to say that the government is corrupt, the president is corrupt, and this one is corrupt, and that one is corrupt. But if we looked within ourselves, when I'm stopped and I'm taking out a bribe and I'm putting it in my ID or underneath my license and I'm giving it to the traffic officer, I'm perpetuating corruption. And that in return then creates poverty, because we have a cycle of monies that has to go benefit our people and not benefiting our people. We are investing monies as a country in things that cannot take away poverty. Example, we have the 300 and, I don't know, is it 50 rand or 80 rand? How much is that money that they are giving?
370 rands.
370 rand that they are giving to
Unemployed people. Yes.
whether they're unemployed. It's subject for debate.
Yes.
Why not use that very money on the call that was made by one political party and say to boost our economy, take that money, put it into our local businesses, and then those people in return get food stamps?
Well, that would be a good idea as well. If one has to cite it, if you're given an opportunity to say, what is the contribution towards that, to say you develop that. But you know, I just learned recently of, if you're talking about monies, that the money laundering that actually happens, of course, without making any kinds, everything
accusation.
is subject to allegations and things like that. There is a money that even Praveen Gordon used to speak about, is called uplang. Uplang, it means you diverting the money that you're supposed to get, or rather the money that you're supposed to pay to SARS as part of your the tax that you're supposed to pay, that you're diverting it. And Praveen Gordhan used to actually target Muslims about this, because unfortunately Muslims are involved in that uplang money, in where this money is actually diverted from paying the government's tax, where it helps the people, where it can actually help to develop the country. You are actually taking it and you are diverting it. And some of this money, unfortunately, some of this monies are given as zakat. You know, that is why I was asking the question to say, in this 1-8 convoy, particularly on the issue of Gaza, was it really a success? Was it really a success to say, there is no where it says that many organizations are there and saying we are giving for Gaza, while they're actually having in their coffers monies that are supposed to go to Gaza? We know of some of the cases of people who collected millions but never went to Gaza. We know some of the cases, practically, that people took the monies that were supposed to be given to Gaza and they enriched their organization. And there's a certain percentage that goes to the organizations. We know of this kind of things, but yet Muslims remain very marginalized and poor. Are we really collecting on behalf of Gaza and making sure that it reaches there with our own Islamic organizations that are there on the ground?
Mana, and I cannot speak to many organizations. Currently, the aid is a challenge for aid to go into the Gaza. There's a fact. There's a challenge for finances to go into the Gaza through the legal ways and means. And there are many organizations that has taken aid to the Gaza, including ourselves facilitating aid into the Gaza. At the time, and I want to place it on record, unapologetically, the Africa 1-8 convoy was a success. We had two objectives. One was to take aid into
Are you
the
talking
Gaza.
about the first one or the second one?
The first one.
Or the first one.
So the Africa 1-8 convoy was a huge success. It achieved its objective of taking aid into the Gaza. Cash was taken into the Gaza. How it was taken, that I unfortunately will not be able to discuss around the table. But I can say to people, by Allah who is my witness, I can guarantee you, whoever had a question about aid cash going into the Gaza, it went in. The question may rise, how did we take it? And that's an answer for another day, or debate for another day. Today, and I've joined the support of many other organizations or individuals to say that every organization in our country today is calling for it for Gaza. Every organization is calling for the support of Gaza or Palestine. We are saying, let us support the loyal organizations, those that we say is working there and doing the work over the years, and be supportive of them rather than duplicating them. You quoted one of the most profound leaders of our country, the late Hazrat Maulana Ihsan Rahmatullah alayhi, and he always used to say, why invent a new wheel when you can fix the existing wheel? So if there is something happening and it is consistent or it's not consistent, see how to get it to be consistent and support what we are doing currently rather than bringing something that is new.
Gaza and Palestine remains part of our very important agenda, and we would love to see one day that Palestinians will be free like any other nations that are there. We would like to see the children in Palestine recognizing the peace. We would like to see the children in Palestine free from poverty, free from all of these bombs and atrocities that are happening around them. We would love to see the children of Palestine being very happy like any other children in the world. Soweto Muslim Association, it is one of our very, very important part in support of Palestine and what is happening to the Palestinians, to see them free and having that peace as human beings. No human being on earth deserves to be killed. No human being on earth that does not deserve the right of living a comfortable and a beautiful life like any other, whether it be Americans, like how Americans love to be free, Palestinians, they would love to be free. The children of Americans, they are free, they're eating very well. The children of Britain, they are free and they're eating very well. The children all over the world, they must be happy and they must feel that they are free to be wherever they need to be. Bringing it back maybe locally, people like Gayton McKenzie of Patriotic Alliance, they came in very strong and they said the colored community of South Africa is somehow marginalized, and some of the Muslims who are of colored origin, they felt there was a home that Gayton McKenzie was somehow creating. Is it now? The question would have been that, is it because of them being marginalized, if there is such marginalization of the colored Muslim communities in South Africa, or is it because he was raising certain issues that are very important within the colored community that needs to be addressed by it needs to be part of the national dialogue?
Mana, I think that you have come. That's why I said when Gayton McKenzie started the Patriotic Alliance, at the time, I sent a message to him on Facebook and congratulating him for some of the work he's doing and saying that I love what he was doing in terms of his support, because he addressed one of the biggest questions that affected the colored community. And when I want to speak to the colored community in general. And although the term colored, at another day, if you invite me, we can take out and defragment the term colored and then understand what it is. But for now, let's say, let us be politically correct and say the colored community has always felt marginalized, even within the ruling party or other parties, that we saw that in the leadership of these parties. Let's look at in the leadership of the African National Congress, for example. For a very long time, we only had Jesse Duarte in the leadership as a face of the colored community. Then we speaking of Trevor Manuel, Ignatius Jacobs, not Barbara Creasy, what was this?
Ibrahim Rasool.
Ibrahim Rasool, the minister of she used to be the minister for DPSA. So we're speaking of very limited people of the colored communities over the years. From when the initial leadership of the government took place in 1994, we spoke about more than 8% of the national government's leadership was made up of colored people. Similarly, we're speaking of almost, they say the cabinet at that time, we spoke about 26% of cabinet was Muslims. We look at the Dullah Umars, the Firoz Kachalias, these people. Firoz Kachalia is now back in the cabinet, but we saw a very limited number. We saw a very high number of members of cabinets throughout national and local provincial government. Then over a very long period of time, we saw these numbers diminishing. And these diminishing factors was then noticed by the people to say, but are we not part of this country? We play a critical role in terms of nurturing this country. And therefore, it then becomes politically correct then to say, yes, as a Muslim community that is being marginalized, I found they would find a home within the Patriotic Alliance. To say no, the Patriotic Alliance now is going to safeguard our marginalizations, but that is limited to that. I just want to say, not so long ago, I think Fadil Adams is saying the same thing in the West, or Cape Congress of the People, Cape Congress, the CCC, Colored Cape Congress. Then we see now there's a new party that's established, the breakaway from Adil and them,
Yes.
Adams, Fadil Adams. We are seeing this pastor here in Johannesburg is also establishing up another party. I don't support the Democratic Alliance at all. But they say the profound words of Nelson Mandela is that now and then you listen to the words of people. You don't need to support them, but take lessons from what they are saying. When 2 days ago, when John Steenhuisen in Soweto, after they announced that Helen Zille will be the mayoral candidate for Johannesburg in the upcoming local elections, and he warns the electorate to say, do not go out there and go vote for all these smaller parties wanting change or claiming for change. Instead, let's put our baskets in one egg and then see. So I'm not saying that you should vote for a particular party. What I am saying is, in South Africa, we need a good governing party. We need a strong opposition equally. And we need a few other parties that will either support the government of a governing party and support an opposition party. But in South Africa, our problem is our political landscape is fragmented. And therefore, in that lots of fragments, there's a colored community, there's an Indian community, and today we are finding it even greater. We're even finding within our African communities, you're either belonging to the Shangans, the Vendas, the Swatis, etc. And these are the challenges we are facing in come election day. I don't know how long the ballot paper is, but I believe it's going to be a long ballot paper.
The same Helen Zille that called the South Africans immigrants, those who are moving from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape. Yes, we still are faced with a lot of difficulties in South Africa. The ballot paper, maybe it might have about 200 other political parties that are there. But you touched on very important issues. You spoke on the issue of the Muslims that have played a role in terms of political positions. Now, the question was then, the likes of Ibrahim Dadu, the likes of Ahmed Timol, the likes of Dula Omar, the likes of Professor Qadar Asmal, Ibrahim Rasool, and the list goes on. And these individuals that were Muslims that were playing a role somehow in their political positions, whether they be under the then ruling party called the ANC, as well as other parties that they were actually representing, but I think predominantly they were ANC, most of them. They always raise the issue of saying, we never went into politics as Muslims. We were not there to say we are here to represent Islam. And that is why till today Islam remains under the 2%. There's no growth in it, because the issue then, it was the issue of what is happening in terms of the political landscape of South Africa and the political role that they were actually playing. While the colored community, somehow it felt marginalized and found itself into all of these other political parties, somehow they would find comfort in terms of home. So it becomes very important also to look at it and say, really, are the colored communities really marginalized in terms of the greater scheme of things, in where economically they are okay and all of that? Maybe we can talk about this next time, and talk about how is it that because during the apartheid, even colors were not the same. There were those who were affluent, there were those who were not affluent. Some, they had to change their names. their surnames rather, and even got privileges, during the apartheid. If you look into the artisan world of South Africa, the skills, then blacks were not allowed to have those skills. But colored communities were given those skills. Hence, if you are to look for someone who is well qualified for doing plumbing, for doing woodworking, to doing upholstery and all of that, you would find it very difficult to find a black person that is qualified with papers. Maybe now things have changed, but then those opportunities are only given to colored communities. How is your community of Klipspruit West, the Muslim colored community, in terms of development?
Mana, okay. The Muslim colored community in Klipspruit, we were to reflect, is largely a revert community, largely. Most of them are a revert community, many of them coming into the fold of Islam either by marriage or accepting Islam, others accepting Islam in prison, there are various dynamics that we need to look at. In terms of skills, yes, there were skilled Muslims who till today you find them, they were either cabinet makers, they were bolsterers, they had some form of skill, and many of them, the Cape Malay particularly, were seamstresses. They used to make clothing, etc. But I think many changes has happened. Coloreds, there are those coloreds, and I always say to colored community, yes, we can say in apartheid we were marginalized, but our black brothers were marginalized greater than ourselves. But marginalization was there. When we look at Yusuf Dado, or we look at the life of Ahmad Katrada, these people played a significant role, and their voices was heard as Muslims, but they may not, yes, represented Muslims. But we should never forget there was guys like Sheikh Najad, Muhammad Najad. There were guys like Tuanguru. These, many people need to reflect, these were political prisoners in our country. They came into the shores of South Africa. Tuanguru came here and he opposed the apartheid government. In fact, for those who do not know, Tuanguru was sent here because of his opposement of the British colony. He was sent to here as a slave, and he came to this country. And South Africans need to understand that, particularly the Muslim community, they were Muslims who played a critical role in fragmenting apartheid. And they were Muslim leaders in the Muslim community. Sheikh Najad, for those who do not know, should go read up on who was Sheikh Najad. The establishment of the MJC, the Muslim Judicial Council, and its voice against apartheid was there. The Muslim Judicial Council was a critical voice, and many of its leaders found itself in Robben Island.
Oh, yes. So we ask Allah to give us also the very same strength that He has given to many other nationalities within South Africa. We last spoke about the strength that you find in terms of organizational strength that you can never defeat within the Indian community. And we are seeing some of those that have actually also played an important role within the Malay community in establishing and also fighting against apartheid, the system that was very bad within the communities, especially establishing the communities within South Africa. And we are praying that, inshallah, we must also be such a people that wants to move along and develop within itself, that when we raise these issues, we're not raising these issues because we are anti-certain people or we are anti-organizations, but these are some of the questions that, some of the things that we hear and we discuss with our colleagues and we hear them around. And it's good when we have such platforms that are afforded to many of us that have never had voices before, that we have voices to speak about relevant issues to develop our communities that are there. Yes, Indian communities, those who were Muslims, they played an important role, but it was, of course, to develop their own communities. The Malay communities was there to develop their own communities. We are hoping that going forward will become one ummah that is there with an interest of developing Islam, propagating Islam for the sake of Allah and not for anything else, for any gain, for any fame, for any name. and we will then see many of those who are visitors that comes to South Africa do not just come to one part of the community. We take them to Sandton, we take them to Houghton, but they don't come to our communities in the townships. So they may see exactly what are the challenges. They always come into very affluent places, you know. Dr. Omar Suleiman came to Sandton, went to Cape Town. They take them to all of these very beautiful, nice places, but they never come to the townships. Maybe we need to invite them to the townships as well to come and see Klipspruit West. How is it that a majority of South Africans, they are the indigenous in majority, but you come to South Africa as a scholar and you do not ask where are the indigenous people? And as we understand and we acknowledge that out of India, the greater majority in terms of Indian population is in South Africa. So to that, maybe people are thinking that, you know, there's no black people in South Africa. How is it that in Africa, in such an African country that is so famous of Mandela, you would not ask where are the indigenous Muslims so that we can be able to address them? Maybe we need to discuss this in our next visit when we invite you again. We are very grateful that you are here with us. In parting, maybe, what is your advice for the Muslims of South Africa?
Well, maybe in my closing remarks, and not much was said of what I think we needed to share with the community. Inshallah, next time we will. But my advice is, firstly, Muslims must eagerly participate in the activities in the community. We don't live in a silo and isolated. We are not exempted from the natural law of life. And therefore, it is important for us. We don't need to necessarily agree with one another, but we must take our seat at the table. If you are involved in political parties, make sure and climb the ladder and ensure that you come in the position of leaderships in those organizations, because it is important that Muslims are protected. And remember, contrary to what the Dullah Umar said, you are first a Muslim before you are a member of that party. And therefore take the position of your Muslims. But maybe also let us put aside our racial differences and unite as a country. I saw yesterday there's a call similar to the national dialogue that is taking place. The Muslims are calling the Muslims dialogue.
Yes.
That is going to take place. And we are saying, take this challenge up, because there are many things that are affecting us. We saw the Saudis took the Hajj thing and threw it to the government, to Darko, to say, it's your people, you deal with it. Take it away from the civil society movements that was busy with it. We are now saying, for us to ensure that it is managed and handled correctly, it's only that Muslim presidents must be in politics, must be in government, and we must be active in our communities, because politics does not begin in parliament. Politics begin in our community. And with that words, Mana, I want to say shukran jazilan to yourself, to the Soweto Muslim Association for hosting me here today, and to the viewers out there, and particularly to the technical team that is there. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for you guys as well, and thank you. And thank you for hosting me, Mana. A very beautiful show, and I hope to have many more visits to you, inshallah.
Shukran jazilan. As we part, we are a people that are not in isolation. We should participate in many of the programs that are there within South Africa. We need to be part of the change that South Africa is talking about. As Muslims, we should not isolate ourselves. We should not also be propagating and promoting the racial lines, because it will never develop us. It will destroy us. As we are taught very profoundly in the Quran that we are made from tribes, different tribes, male and female, different tribes and nation. This, it is so that we recognize one another. But as for the best amongst you is those who are conscious of the Creator, conscious of Allah. Let us hold on to that, to the very strong rope of Islam, strong rope of understanding who we are, and with the love and patriotism of our country. May Allah make it such that South Africa becomes prosperous. We become the people that are recognized. We become the people that brings about change, and we make a mark in this world, and we become the better people. Until again we meet, you are in conversation with Soweto Muslim Association. Continue to subscribe with us. Continue to follow us in our Facebook pages, to also in our TikTok pages, as well as our YouTube pages. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like to hear from your comments as well. show us the positiveness that is there, and we will extend also that positive part of ours from the Soweto Muslim Association. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.